Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on February 20th, 2026 at approximately 8 p.m. PST. Now, I've made it my life's calling to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Now, I bill myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the exact same tools I personally use in my own day-to-day life. And the philosophies of life I talk about are the same philosophies I guide virtually every decision I make by. With this in mind, I know these tools will work for you because they keep working for me and have literally worked for thousands of other people over the years with varying degrees of success, depending on their own personal efforts. Now, before we get into things, I do have to tip my hat to Storm. He is our primary moderator in the back, and he tends to stay hidden most of the time to make sure that tech keeps running properly and the problem children are removed before they actually become problem children. Then we have, scrolling down here, we have Kira Ava, who is one of our moderators in the chat room. She is there again to help conversations continue and to spot the questions that I miss. Now, Kira Ava is not only a moderator, she's also my wife and my editor-in-chief. Then we have L.A. Moon. She is our primary moderator in the chat room, and she's there to make sure the problem children are curbed, that the conversation doesn't lapse, and much more importantly, in my eyes, she's there to make absolutely certain that I pay attention to my physical health, so I don't end up dropping dead on you. Although in my defense, I do think that would be a showstopper in more than one way. But I've done it before, and it's getting a little redundant. That said, now we've got those. We got anybody else in here? Nope, that's where we start. So let's go back up to the top. And before we get into things, we have Renee Andrews. You are back in with the gold. Nice to see you. Glad you could join us. Hopefully things are calming down for you. I know your life can get a little on the hectic side on occasion, so hopefully it's stabilizing. Then we scroll down a bit, and we find Jeff Garvey. You are in with the silver. How you doing? Glad you could join us tonight. And remember, guys, if you've got a question, absolutely pop it into the chat room in all caps so I can find the thing. And coming in with the bronze is Operation Shutdown. How you doing, Operation? Glad to see you can make it. And that is where we start. We'll keep an eye open for other people as they come in. Sooner or later, we'll start off with a full run. But hey, I'm quite happy with where we're going. We tend to fluctuate, and we're down to 717 right now, but that'll climb back up. Today we are looking at the Vulcahn Homeworld, and as Storm was kind enough to point out, we are not talking about Mr. Spock's birthplace. First of all, as going on that same theme. Bones used to call him that green-blooded hobgoblin. Okay. Vulcans are not green-blooded. They're crystal-based. They're also tripeds. Which, when you look at the actual configuration of them, they have 3 arms, 3 legs, and, of course, the 7th point being the head. Now, the Vulcahn Homeworld is crystal-based. We are not talking about a place that's got a whole lot of green to it, unless you consider jade or malachite or a few other stones and what have you. But we're not talking about a world that has a lot of vegetation. Okay, when we start looking at the Homeworld, we start looking at a world that is literally a crystal. It is an inorganic world. As I saw written in Stormtroopers, it is a hostile world. It is a dangerous world. On the other hand, it is beautiful as all get out. Jeff, I like what you said here. Jeff Garvey has said, Keith, please pull out the figurine so I can visualize. If I had one handy, I would, but I will give you this. That was something that was brought to my attention, and I am going to start tracking down the appropriate ones. I actually don't have a tripod figure aside from one, and it's not a crystalline. But the best way I can put it, no, can't do that. The best way I can put it at this point is you've got a creature, you've got an entity that has 3 legs, okay, much more stable than dual. Okay, the 2-legged form is actually the most unstable and ineffective corporeal form available. But picture, if you will, a 3-legged stool. Okay, and this will solve that problem. Does that actually? Yeah, that right there that Storm has kindly brought up on screen, there is your Vulcahn. Now you'll notice, oh, I did not notice that. Well, that's entertaining, and I can't do anything about that. I'm going to have to double check. But that is a Vulcahn. Okay. LA goes, 2-legged form for humans often matches their brains. What, doesn't work? We have, by the way, we had Operation come in with bronze, and therefore when we scroll down, we've got Woo, you are in with the honorable mention. You know, the thing is, the Vulcahn world is about as volatile as it can get. Okay, it is by human standards still primordial. Where are we here? Jeff goes, silicon can act like carbon organic. You know, oh, yeah, LA goes, no, not especially stable. The Vulcahn Homeworld, okay, number one, they still breathe an oxygen mix, sort of, okay, because all life requires a combination of organic and inorganic. But on the Vulcahn Homeworld, you are looking in, you are looking at essentially organic mica. There's a lot of places that have a thin sheet of translucent mineral that actually produces an oxygen. It mixes an oxygen base. Blue Cruz, how you doing? Glad you could join us. You know, the nice part about it, when you go to their world, first of all, do understand, walking around outside is not necessarily in your best interest. You're dealing with temperatures that melt stone. I'm thinking this isn't necessarily a good place for humans. Actually, in all fairness, I'm thinking it's a good place for a lot of them. But yeah, now the Vulcahn Homeworld, first of all, let's get clear about one little detail. NASA knows about it. I know they know about it because decades back, I was poking around just pushing buttons to see what would happen. And I stumbled across an ephemeris linked to NASA's site, okay, which shows the planetary locations throughout the year, throughout several centuries. Vulcan is inside Mercury's orbit. It's actually right inside the sun's photosphere. Renee, there are two possibilities there. Renee's just going, I had a dream where there were large gems growing out of the ground, only rocky bare ground. Don't know where I was. One of two possibilities. Okay, one of two probabilities is more to the point. The Vulcahn homeworld itself, it is quite possible, especially given your past, it is quite possible that you were there. The other place is, and I think it is in Nevada, but I'm not certain of that. Nevada, or is it No, it might be New Mexico. There is a cave system that is full of 6 foot and better gemstones. Okay, crystalline structures. Now, the thing you got to remember about the Vulcahn, okay, the Vulcahn, what they do is they fire their chips, if you will, into orbit and let them drift. They will eventually land. Okay, now there's a couple of ways they do this. Okay, one of the things you got to realize is not all meteors that hit the Earth are stone. Okay, Vulcans, the Vulcahn, what they do is they turn around. As a matter of fact, I got to correct that. I got to get a hold of Chris, it seems.
Looks like, I think it's pronounced Carlsbad Caves in New Mexico.
That'll be it. Yeah, Carlsbad Caverns. Thank you very much, LA. See, the Vulcahn, what they do is they turn around and they literally send their children or their young adults, if you will, to another world to grow there. Now, they tend to stay underground and work their way into what we know as Hollow Earth. And yeah, pretty much every planet has one. Okay, well, therefore, Renee's just saying it wasn't a cave. My suspicion is for whatever lucky reason, you likely ended up on the Vulcahn homeworld. This is a good thing in my eyes. Okay, the nice part about it is, I don't know if you guys have ever run into them before, but singing crystals, which we have here on Earth. Okay, as a matter of fact, give me half a second. This one I can show you. In love?
Yep.
This is one you get to take a look at.
I remember you showed me this a while back.
Now, you will find these in some places on Earth. Okay, let me get that other one up. I do this because that way I can actually see what I'm doing. Now, that is a singing crystal. By the way, also known as a young Vulcahn. There you go.
Ah, very nice. Well, this is interesting. So with it being here, does it still have the potentiality to continue growth, or is it stagnated?
It will. They stagnate here, usually.
Yeah.
Okay. The Vulcahn homeworld is a wonderful little thing. Oh, Jeff's going Crystal Caves in Pennsylvania. I went to. So now I didn't know about the second one here. Okay. The neat part about it, like this one is both. This one has all three. It's got the smoky, which is the kind of blackish top. Then you've got the milky, which is halfway down, and you get right down to the snow quartz. But this I've had around for decades. Don't ask me where I picked it up because I have no clue. Okay, but the Vulcahn homeworld, they've got a really neat setup. They don't use technology. Okay, they communicate by essentially sound waves. Okay, it's not quite sound waves, but it's along the same lines. Now, I will tell you, and Kara can bounce it and back this one up. Sound has a texture. Okay, it's got a feel to it. And when you change the color of sound, you change the meaning of it. This is why humans don't communicate well with Vulcans. It's a little rough when you think about it. They don't do good. Humans don't do good with changing color. I mean, I've seen humans, and Caucasians are easy to spot. Treat them properly, they'll turn red. Treat them improperly, they'll turn blue. It's not. I mean, it does communicate, not a good way. But what we have to remember with the Vulcahn Homeworld is they have their entire ecosystem is liquid. Okay, you're talking about liquid stone. Okay, picture, if you will, if you take stone and you melt it, it becomes magma. Picture the same idea, only the crystalline form is a lot hotter, because I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's got to be a lot hotter in order to liquefy. Now, the fact is that Vulcan is in the sun's photosphere. Okay, you're not going to see it with your bare eye, with your naked eye. Matter of fact, you're not going to see it or anything else if you look at it with an actual direct telescope. That has a really bad habit of burning out the human optics. Now, the Vulcahn, they will travel about their world. It is very much a commune setup. Okay, and this is one of the reasons why I turned around and I grabbed this. I keep my book handy because I got way too much information going through my head way too often. But I am glad I made that little note there, because I'm going to have to straighten that out. I just noticed something that I had forgotten about, and I've got to get it corrected for second printing. Just looking for the extra piece of information. And my hands would work, I'd be so much better. There we are. Now, the neat part about it is the Vulcahn do not technically have a leader per se. Okay. And the reason for that is they don't have to. But they do have this neat tendency of adapting to wherever they go. To adapting to the locations they land on. The other thing you'll have to remember with them is, number one, when I talk about them having a liquid environment, okay, yes, it is solid crystal, okay, but the lifeblood of said planet is liquid crystal. Now, here's the thing that throws people for a loop. That same river that waves its way through the mountains, okay, is the same river that weaves its way across the skyline. The neat part about it is that when you get up there, okay, and the young Vulcahn, they will actually surf those waves, both on the ground, under the ground, all three of them. When we talk about being trifibious, Vulcahn travel, and it doesn't matter their size to speak of. You just need a heavier wind to get the big ones. Okay, but they tend to travel on the rivers, underground, on the surface, and through the airwaves. Now, the neat thing about it is their technology and their whole method of communication is done on an accelerated crystalline base.
We have a quick question from Operation.
Sure.
He asks, have the Vulcahn ever visited Earth?
Oh, they live here. Well, that was blunt.
Okay.
The reality is, Operation, yes. The crystal caves that we were just talking about inside those crystal caves, you will find the Vulcahn. Will they talk to you? I wouldn't hold my breath. Okay. You probably don't want them talking to you in most cases. Because understand something. When they actually talk, they spit crystals. Now, take an accelerator cannon and spit a shard out of it. This is their normal method of communication. For humans, this is not going to end well. But yeah, they are. I didn't realize they had the 2 nests. I knew they had the 1. But the fact they've got 2 tells me flat out, and I can almost tell you, if you look at the location of the 2, go to the other side of the planet, bearing in mind that we have me in North America on this side, that puts the 3rd cave somewhere over in Africa. Somebody else gets to do the triangulation. Okay, and bear in mind that 3rd cave may not be on the surface. It may be underwater. I just don't know where that location is. But you're dealing with something where if you watch the sunrise, it glows at a staggering level. Like, this is one of, in my opinion, one of the most, shall we say, enticing planets to go on. If you've ever seen the Aurora Borealis on Earth, okay, I'll tell you, it's nothing compared to what these guys have. And I've heard it myself. I actually listened to the Aurora Borealis when I was living on Vancouver Island. Okay, it's a sound you never forget. And I'll tell you, the sound that they show you on YouTube does not do justice. But the Vulcahn Homeworld has an interesting situation. Okay, the Vulcahn Homeworld has that same kind of music going on all the time. Okay, now there was and I don't actually have the book anymore, but Anne McCaffrey put out a book called the Crystal Singers. And I suspect, because I never actually ended up getting a chance to buy it. Okay.
That's the first of a trilogy, by the way.
From way back in the 80s, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
The reason I know it wouldn't have to be the 80s is because that's when I quit reading. Yeah.
Actually, I think Crystal Singer is the name of the series. It could be the name of the first book too. I don't remember now, but it is a trilogy of 3.
But yeah, the Vulcahn Homeworld, it has, number one, when you're talking about air turbulence, you got to remember this is all solid crystal. Okay, which means when you take a look at when you try and navigate it, you got to realize that the crystalline form that they utilize is not good for Terran technology. Now, the good news is Terrans have never gotten they've never got anything solid up there, at least not with any living people. Now, I am curious. I was trying to find something and didn't have time to track it down. The other day, I came across literally a drink that has originated on Vulcahn and is widely accepted and basically paid for. Okay, in the consortium conglomerate, because it's an empathic enhancement. Okay, so it does make your drunk extremely high. Now, where am I? There we are. The other thing we have to remember when we take a look at that, and what I said was kind of like an organic mica. Okay, that is their energy transference that promotes evolution. Okay, it promotes the growth. And yes, because all forms of entities require a mix of diet. They do not survive on, And I shouldn't say they require a mix. Well, they do, but it doesn't have to be vegetation. It's a good thing considering the Vulcans, the plants on Vulcan could not survive. There were a few that tried, but that didn't work well. But what you're looking at is a very high speed, and it's not just a question of it being a high speed orbit. Okay, because of the solar flares that we already know take place, from the sun itself. Vulcan gets them worse than Earth does. Okay, and yes, Vulcans did early on make the mistake of trying to take humans back to their homeworld to study. That didn't work any better than the Wayland managed to make. Okay, when humans are taken to an environment that they cannot survive in, well, amazingly enough, they don't survive. Makes communicating with them a little rough. But on Vulcahn, what you got to remember is that this world is constantly in turmoil. Yes, it does have floating islands. That's because some of the stone, some of the crystal there is not absolutely dense. Of course, you got to remember, we're still dealing with a stone structure. Okay, the majority of it is crystalline, but it's kind of like having liquid concrete. Okay, it constantly readjusts itself depending on what's happening. And yes, the second a solar flare hits, we feel the flare, it upsets electronics. They feel the flare, it upsets traffic flow. Okay, and these guys are completely nomadic, partially because they don't have a lot of choice until they get older. But there are animals there that are, shall we say, not healthy to be around because they literally will eat the Vulcahn. Okay, I mean, there is always a predator. Every planet I've ever been to has a predator and prey balance to it. Okay, it's not always as cut and dried as what you might think, but they have a commune. It is not a question of who runs what or who dictates what, but they don't have ships of their own. That's why they catapult their own bodies. Okay, but they catapult their own bodies in order to get there. But all that requires is a volatile eruption. They ride it into orbit and away they go. Now the reason that they live, as I mentioned, okay, their surface is absolutely primordial, but they have developed a civilization underground where their primary concentration is on communication lines. Okay, the neat part about it is when you look at them, okay, number one, they don't just come in like this is clear, okay, but when you look at the crystals at the Vulcahn themselves, they come in an entire array of color, okay, even to the point of being absolutely pitch black. But it's really remarkable when you meet a black Vulcahn. Number one, they are not seen as a different race. The Vulcahn look at the entire species as one race. Color is just a side effect. Okay. And the really weird part about it is when you start looking at the way their children grow, they can change from one color to another depending on the exposure to whichever liquid they're dealing with. One of the hardest things that we got to remember is that the Vulcahn. Now, get this: we've talked about Earth defending itself against off-worlders time and again. You realize if the Vulcahn actually went to war against Earth, all they'd have to do is send one of their big people over here. One. Okay, we're not talking about an invasion. We're talking about one solid crystal meteor aimed right, and all of a sudden Earth is gone. The fact of the matter is, Earth itself is a Kaboran, and the Vulcahn are quite happy with them. The reality of that side of it is the Vulcahn quite often, and this is where it gets a little weird, they are Vulcahn when they're young. When they get to be a certain size, some of them evolve and become Kaboran. Okay, they're actually related, although they have their own societies. Okay, and I know that sounds completely backwards, but what the heck? This is what I get for having way too much information and having to piece through it all. Okay, the neat part about it from your standpoint is that we are looking at a race that if you pay attention to them, okay, you can learn a staggering amount about patience. I mean, let's face it, the Arborians are patient to a fault, but the Vulcahn make the Arborians look like they're in a hyperspace, like they're just going full tilt. But they do not, the Vulcahn do not have technology as you know it. Okay, they specialize in communication forms, whether it be optical, auditory, or literally texture. Okay, they have the ability to literally spray part of themselves in order to get a point across. And no, that is not like humans swinging a fist. Okay, unless a fist is capable of punching a hole in Terran main battle armor. You'll find that number one, the composite configuration of Vulcahn is crystalline in its extreme. Okay, it does have some stone caught in with it, but that is all. Like I said, it's almost like liquid concrete. But that temperature, you're not going to get to congeal very well. The other thing we have to remember on that planet, you don't have a lot of predators. You do have, some Vulcahn that will consume others. Okay, so yeah, they are somewhat cannibalistic. But you got to remember, their planet, and I really should get in touch with her, but their planet will eat the Vulcahn if the Vulcahn become a problem. Okay, it's one of these things. It's an ongoing turmoil. But unlike most planets, if you take a look at any other planet, I think, okay, you look at the planet and it will stay stable. On Vulcahn, that planet keeps turning inside out. Okay, if you've ever watched concrete mix in a mixer, okay, it turns in on itself. Kind of like if you look into the top of a washing machine. The stuff is pulled to the bottom and popped back to the top. This is going on all the time, with the one added bonus that the air, the liquid, and the earth all meld together. Okay, and constantly reform. Except where the Vulcahn have said, no, we're building a community here, and they will literally go out of their way to stabilize the material. I'm just looking to see if we got anything going on here.
It looks like you are clear. Although I do have a question.
Sure, fire.
So, you mentioned that the Vulcahn communicate, I believe, to some degree in sound waves. You also mentioned that some evolve to become Kaboran. So, does the Vulcahn homeworld itself actually resonate in the same sort of sonic manner, and do other Corboran actually do this as well?
The short answer is yes. And I'm going to go one step further because on Vulcahn, you got the Vulcahn. On Earth, we have the Corridon. And the Corridon are on many different planets. The Corridon are Earth elementals. The Vulcahn are also an elemental. They are a crystalline elemental, though. Okay, so it really depends on where they end up as to what's going to thrive.
And do these guys communicate, say, the Cordon and the Vulcahn, because they are of the same source, if you will, almost? Do they communicate with each other?
Ultimately, they're a different dialect.
Oh, okay.
So yes, they do communicate. However, the Cordon do not. The Cordon do not communicate in color change.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because they are a static form.
Mm-hmm.
Now on the other hand, the one race that can communicate with all of them is the Korlok. Now you got to remember the Korlok are essentially 160-pound amoeba. Okay, so they can alter their appearance. If you ever watch Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and you take a look at Odo, that is a Korlok. Okay, but on Vulcahn, you're looking at a species that, when we talk about communication lines, they all talk through the same bloodlines, as in the liquid crystal. Okay, the ones on the ground communicate through the liquid crystal. The ones in the air communicate through the jet streams in that location. Obviously, there are certain little crossovers. Okay, but the reason the communication lines work so well is because the larger the Vulcahn accelerate with their own configuration, they can accelerate the airflow much like a wind tunnel. Now, here's the kicker to it. I've mentioned that they do not have ships to travel with. Okay, but eons back, somebody before the Vulcahn actually joined the consortium. Somebody tried taking out a Vulcahn homeworld, only to find out that they have a cute little weapon, and it's literally bioengineered. We'll use the term bio a little loosely. Okay, but they will take a wind, they will take the natural wind and literally focus it into a spike. They'll focus it and harden it. Net result, you have a crystalline lance traveling at faster than the speed of sound with no guidance. There's no technology to shut it down. So it's kind of like the ancient spearfishing that North American Indians used to use. Okay, and some people still do, where you take a spear and you try and snag a fish. These guys will launch a shard, and not a living one, just a pack of solid air into the atmosphere and subsequently into orbit. Now, this does not end well for anything caught in front of it, because you got to remember, on Earth, I think the densest stone on Earth. Well, that was almost rude, so I'm not going to finish that thought. I think the densest stone on Earth, at least gemstone, is diamond. But diamonds of Vulcahn can powder a diamond by simply picking it up and closing their hand. Like, it's just that easy. Needless to say, when you extrapolate from that, they can take other stones, and in this case carbon, okay, and they can also crush it to make it into a diamond. This is why these guys are very peaceful. nobody really wants to tangle with them. They're very much a pacifistic race. But like all pacifists, push them too far, it's going to have a bad outcome. So what we're looking at here, are we really that? Holy mackerel. That day went by, that hour went by in one heck of a hurry.
It really has. We've got a little over 15 minutes.
Did your machine just beep?
Yep.
Okay. We are looking at a world that doesn't have a static surface. Okay.
Can you explain what, let's say, if you were coming, if a ship were coming in close or was able to view it, what would this planet look like? For instance, ours looks like a blue marble as seen from space. What does the Vulcahn homeworld look like?
This is going to sound really twisted, but picture a ball of silly putty being mixed in a mix master, where it's got constant whirlpools drawing into it and water spouts popping out of it. It's almost like as a matter of fact, I should go and get it, but it kind of looks like it's a ball, all right, but it turns inside itself quite regularly. Operation. The short answer is yes. Okay, this funny little crystal, I don't recall when I got it, but this little crystal that I'm hanging on to is a Vulcahn communication device. Okay, makes it real easy to talk to them. But the fact of the matter is, replicating it is a bit of a bitch. Pardon me, that was wrong. Actually, it wasn't wrong, just rude. But the answer is their operation. Yes, I still am in solid communication with them. Okay. And they are like I said, they are one of the few species that are virtually 100% pacifistic. I think that's a new word. But they have no interest in conflict, in conquest. They send spores, they send children to other worlds simply to gain experience. Now, the reality is, in most cases, a Vulcahn child will end up on the planet until, and you'll love this one, until the planet itself dies. When the planet explodes, and this is why Vulcahn are essentially immortal. Okay, when the planet they are on, whether it is a Caboran or simply a planet, simply a rock, they will be there until said planet breaks apart. Then, and only then, will they travel to another world. Needless to say, it can be a long while between vacations. Now, the other neat little part about it, whoop, you got something there, I think. Nope, there we are. The nice part about it is that world. It's great if you go out there and you stay off the planet, because they don't care if you watch. Okay, they don't care if you observe what's going on. And I'll tell you, if you go way back, 50 years ago, okay, on Earth, there used to be a neat type of art where you'd get a pottery wheel spinning, and they would pour paint they'd lock a piece of paper on it and pour paint onto it and let the centrifugal force scatter it. Now, this is the same kind of appearance that you get on the Vulcahn homeworld. Okay, because the colors are different. Okay, we are dealing with a complete rainbow. And you got to remember, because we're dealing with crystalline, it's not only a rainbow on the ground, but the atmosphere itself is absolutely vibrant. Okay, I will caution you, if you're epileptic, not a good idea to go there. Or if you suffer from motion sickness. Either one are likely to be triggered really heavily. But these guys, what they do is they live to explore. Now, here's the thing about it. This is the other reason they send their children out there. Because they have solid communication back and forth. And yes, I did say it is sort of optical. But what you got to realize is optics do not require, the optics they work with, and for that matter, the optics that humans work with, don't require a stable atmosphere to work. Okay, so these guys communicate over extreme distances in order to enhance their own race. Okay, and then all of that information, when you take a look at that miasmic the miasmic pool, what you're looking at is their information database. It is constantly updating, upgrading, and relaying the new information to the rest of the entire community. Now you got to remember, yes, they're a commune, but they individually are impulsively nomadic. Okay, and before anybody goes there, know the Vulcahn will not destroy the planet they land on. Okay, they take that as a long-term investigation. Okay, needless to say, when you're looking at knowledge miners, Vulcahn are very good at it. The thing you got to remember is that humans are now using crystals as a way of building computers. The Vulcans have been doing it for millennia. Well, eons, really. And I don't know what a larger measurement is of that. Okay, so we are talking about a species that is very interested in evolution. Okay, and in the evolution of other planets. Now, the ones that are here have been watching humans evolve. Okay, and in many cases, I hate to tell you this, guys, no, I don't. They've been watching humans and human society devolve. But they're not here to tell you how to do anything. They're not here to educate you. They are here literally to gather information and send it home. Okay. Now, I do know that where they come from, where they originally came from, is outside of the Milky Way. Okay. This is just been the Vulcan itself is just one of a number of waypoints for them. But even their homeworld, which no, that one I'm still waiting to go to. And we are down to the 10-minute mark, which I do appreciate that, LA. You know, the reality of it is when you're looking at the Vulcahn, they pass information. There are a few species that do it, but they pass it across the cosmos. Okay. So we are talking about people that are very open with communication, but you got to remember, they're not going to speak human very well. Okay. They work on a much tighter and tighter line. Now, let me just go to here. Okay. Just to let you know, guys. Now, because we're at the 10-minute mark here, on Saturday, as in tomorrow, we are going to be looking at alien abduction and its purpose. Okay, why are these different species doing this? And bear in mind, we're not just talking about alien; we're talking ancient races. Which, yes, that's alien, but it's not just the off-worlders. Now, sad to say, guys, wish us luck, but Sunday we will not be having a show. Okay, I might do a day in the office, but Sunday evening, Kira's got a gig she's got a live performance because she's a professional flutist. Okay, so that night's hers. I won't be here. On Monday, we are going to go back in and look at finances and financial debt organization. Show you how to figure out where you're standing, how to go about turning it around. Okay, and then on Tuesday, we're going to follow through with a little more on the finances with household finances and your children or your charges, if you will, because we're going back into this area of making absolutely certain we land on our feet. Okay, people have not been reminded how to function properly. So that's where we're going with it. But the nice part about it, where it comes to communication lines, okay, when we're looking at communication lines, the Vulcahn have it down to a fine art. And like I said, humans are only finding out now that crystals work better for electronics than metal does.
Keith, can you, before we sign out here, can you give our viewers, those who are currently watching and those who are potentially going to see our show later, a quick reminder on how to get a hold of you?
I keep forgetting that, At the top of the stream, at the top of the chat room, and you'll find a link to buymeacoffee.com/InnerVoiceJ. That will get you to all of the books I've got in print. And it gets you to 8 of them right now, although the 9th will be coming up soon. Quick note to Storm. I just got the PDF to send you for believing your success. But you go to the stream at buymeacoffee.com/InnerVoiceJ. That will get you to all of it, including the free magazine. Okay, the free magazine, Positive Perspectives. With this in mind, guys, let me just go back to the right screen. There we are. With this in mind, I do want to say thank you so very much for sharing your time with us today. Really appreciate it, and definitely look forward to seeing you again. I do my best to be here for a day in the office. Okay, but we will certainly be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. PST. Okay, and at that point, we are going to, and again, good memory, just really short. We will be looking at alien abduction and its purpose. Oh, quick note. That particular topic will be expanded on greatly at CaribouCon. Okay, and if I can remember the date, I know it's in September sometime. I think the 18th to the 20th, but double check for yourself. Okay, because I'll be speaking at that con. That said, until we meet again, do take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.